Ladies and gentlemen, this here is a passport, as you all know. This passport is not something I own, it owns me. I'm its property. Why has this little booklet become so important in our lives? Travel is the very lifeblood of this planet, not just for the economy, but for the human beings we all are, because we are by our very nature a migratory species. We are always on the move. Nevertheless, this freedom of travel, which is a God-given right, has become rather problematic in the modern world. And a few years ago, I was involved in setting up a museum in my native city of Antwerp in Belgium. A museum precisely devoted to the enormous migrations of people between the 1870s and the 1940s, going from Europe to the Americas, including to Latin America, of course. And being a writer as much as a diplomat, I got intrigued by how the circumstances were. Not so much the life on the ships, because we have all seen the movie Titanic, and we know it was pretty accurate apart from some of the romantic details. But I got interested in the paperwork. Dry stuff, you will say. Well, no. I held in my hands in the National Archives in Philadelphia in the US the very first manifest of the ship that had sailed from Antwerp to Philadelphia in 1872. And I was looking for passport numbers. Well, there were none. The message is there were no passports. Then I did a bit more of research and I came across a quote from a British author who had traveled to the United States in the 1890s, Thomas Angell. And he said, in so many words, when I came there was no passport, no quota, no visa, no stamp, nothing, and nothing of that was expected of me. I just traveled from A to B and I came there without a passport. So my question is, what have we done to ourselves? Now, passports did still exist, even in those days, between the 1850s and 1914. But they had become a backward thing. They existed, guess where? In the Russian Empire and in the Ottoman Empire, not the most progressive states, even in that age, where they were used to control internal migration. The rest of the world, and certainly the more enlightened world, saw them as backward vestiges of social control. They were a dirty little book. So again, what have we done to ourselves? And the thought to remember today, ladies and gentlemen, passports in the past once were a thing of the past. So what happened? In 1914, Europe started to dig trenches, the First World War. And ever since, frontiers have been with us and actually have been multiplying. And they interfere with our God-given right to move around as free human beings. It seems as if at some point in time, when the steamship and the telegraph may travel easy, we could do away with those little dirty books. But then with all the newer marvels that we have added since, they came back with a vengeance. Passports are the sharpest instruments of our frontiers. And today we have Doctors Without Frontiers, we have Journalists Without Frontiers, but unfortunately we also have Frontiers Without Frontiers. They seem to be multiplying ever more. In the European Union, which I have the honor to represent here in Cuba, we have made a valiant effort to do away with our internal borders and to give our citizens and visitors their God-given right again to move around freely. But even that freedom is constantly challenged by what happens outside the fences of Europe, and our fences are just one of the many fences in the world. So what have we done to ourselves once again? I think it's our fears. We have fears of politics, we have fears to lose or to endanger our too narrowly defined identities, and that is what keeps frontiers alive and multiplying. So let's think about this. Here in Havana, the very wall of the Malecon, where we all like to sit down on a sunny day or a warm evening, for the longest time was the last frontier of the Cold War. Luckily, freedom of travel in Cuba now has been freed up, and we're very grateful for that. But seen from the outside, that very wall of the Malecon is still an obstacle and a limit for many people to come to this country. We will not live in a world without frontiers or without passports anytime soon. That is an utopia. And we diplomats are often on the wrong side always on the wrong side of the visa window. Whatever we can do when somebody comes to our embassies, we can look the traveler in the face and try to make a fair decision. In a way, we facilitate travel, but we also enforce frontiers. That is a given. But I would like you to remember is that frontiers are not a necessity. We should slowly try to do away with them, certainly not multiply them, and accept what we all can be together as human beings and move around on this planet of ours, which is our common property and our common heritage. So again, ladies and gentlemen, passports in the past were a thing of the past, and let's not multiply frontiers without frontiers. Muchísimas gracias.